Hey everyone, and welcome. You guys really seem to latch on to the 80-20 principle, sending over a ton to unpack, so let's dive in. This is one of those concepts that can really change how you see, well, everything.
It's kind of like having a secret formula for making a bigger impact without breaking a sweat.
Totally. Like finding that one crucial file in your overwhelmingly messy desk drawer in, like, 2 seconds flat. We're looking at excerpts from the 80-20 principle itself, plus some fascinating articles some of you sent.
And what's wild is that this idea, which Vilfredo Pareto stumbled upon back in 1897, it's not just some dusty old theory.
It's about how 80% of the wealth was controlled by just 20% of the people, right? I mean, that's still a big deal today, over a century later.
Exactly. And the truly mind-blowing part, this 80-20 imbalance, it pops up everywhere. Think about manufacturing businesses use these things called Pareto charts, and they often show that a huge chunk, like 80% of customer complaints, you know what? They often come from just 20% of the causes.
So instead of getting lost in the weeds, you can focus on that crucial 20% and see a much bigger impact.
Exactly. It's about directing your energy where it matters most.
Okay, that makes sense in like a business setting. But we're talking about applying the 80-20 principle to pretty much every area of life, right?
Absolutely. It's not about finding faults. It's about understanding that a small portion of what we do, it often creates the biggest results, whether that's leading a company or just managing your daily to-do list.
So how does this translate to, say, Monday morning when I'm staring at a to-do list a mile long? Give me some practical magic.
Well, imagine this. Maybe 80% of the value you create in a day actually comes from just 20% of your actual work time. It really makes you think, am I spending my time on the things that matter?
It's about finding that sweet spot where effort meets impact, right? I remember the text really highlighted that it's about identifying what's already working and doubling down, not spreading yourself too thin, trying to fix everything.
Exactly. Play to your strengths, right?
They had a great example in one of the excerpts about Electronic Instruments, Inc. Get this, 30% of the products generated a crazy 67% of their total profits.
Yeah.
That's wild.
That's the 80-20 principle in action. Imagine if they put even more energy into those high-performing products.
It's like a shortcut to success.
Mm-hmm.
There was another example that really hit home for me. It was about a strategy consulting firm where 80% of their growth tied to companies with less than 20% of the total workforce.
It really challenges how we think about success, right? It's not always about working harder. Sometimes it's about aligning yourself with the right company, the right projects, the right opportunities. That's where this principle can be so powerful.
Finding the perfect wave to ride instead of battling the current. And get this isn't just for corporate hotshots. We're going to uncover how this 80-20 magic can change your time, your relationships, even your happiness.
It's about working smarter, not harder, and finding those areas where your efforts have the biggest impact. You know, one of the most liberating aspects of the 80-20 principle is how it applies to time management. We often feel like we're constantly strapped for time, but this principle challenges that notion with the idea of time affluence.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Time affluence sounds way better than the time famine I usually experience. Tell me more.
It's all about recognizing that we often spend a huge chunk of our time, maybe even that 80%, on activities that don't really move the needle in our lives. The key is to identify and eliminate those low-value activities so we can focus on the 20% that truly matters.
So it's about working smarter, not harder, even when it comes to our time. But how do we actually make that happen? Do you have any tips, any tricks, any inspiring examples?
Absolutely. Think about William Ewart Gladstone. This guy wasn't just a one-time Prime Minister of Britain. He held that position 4 times. And on top of that, he was a voracious reader, a theater enthusiast, a world traveler, and even known for his efforts in rescuing fallen women.
Wow, Gladstone sounds like he had a serious handle on this whole time affluence thing. What a rock star. It's amazing how he managed to achieve such incredible political success while pursuing so many other passions. It really highlights how the 80-20 principle can unlock hidden potential in our lives.
It's incredibly inspiring, isn't it? And it shows that we don't have to be defined by this idea of constant busyness. We can achieve amazing things and still have time for the things we love.
Speaking of things we love, our material also touched on the importance of relationships and how the 80-20 principle plays a role there. What's the key takeaway there?
It's about quality over quantity. The text emphasizes that a small number of deep, meaningful relationships are far more valuable than a vast network of superficial connections. Think about the mentors who guide you, the peers who inspire you, the colleagues who challenge you to grow. Those are the relationships that truly make a difference in your life.
It's like that old saying, you can't be everything to everyone, but you can be everything to someone. It's about investing our energy in the relationships that truly nourish us and help us thrive.
And remember that reciprocity is key. Building strong relationships is a two-way street. It's about giving as much as you receive, offering support, and showing up for the people who matter most.
There was an interesting parallel drawn in the material between this idea and the Beatles song The End, suggesting that what we give is ultimately what we receive in relationships. It's about nurturing those connections and recognizing their value.
Absolutely. And choosing those relationships carefully is just as important. The material even mentioned a study on a rehabilitation project for young women. Despite being exposed to numerous relationships early on, they struggled to form deep connections later in life.
That's a powerful reminder that it's not just about the number of connections we have, but the quality of those connections that truly shapes our lives.
You've got it. Now let's talk about the financial side of things. The 80-20 principle can also be a game changer when it comes to building wealth.
Okay, this is where I need some extra guidance, because numbers tend to make my head spin. What's the secret sauce when it comes to 80-20 investing?
The core idea is that a small portion of your investments, that crucial 20%, often holds the potential for the greatest returns. It's about identifying those high potential areas and focusing your resources there.
So rather than spreading ourselves thin across a million different investments, it's about homing in on the ones that have the most potential to multiply.
Precisely. And never underestimate the power of compounding. The material highlighted how £100 invested back in 1950 would be worth a staggering £23,000 today. It's like a financial snowball effect, gaining momentum over time.
That's incredible. But for those of us who don't have a crystal ball, how do we even begin to identify those golden investment opportunities? What separates the potential superstars from the rest?
That's where careful research, seeking expert advice, and understanding your own risk tolerance come into play.
It's like finding those hidden treasures in the investment world. But you know what's really cool about all this? It's not just about raking in the big bucks or getting a million things done, is it? It feels like the 80-20 principle can help you create a more fulfilling life too, right?
Exactly. It's about figuring out what really matters to you and then making choices that bring more joy, more fulfillment, and yeah, even more success. It's about that feeling of this is where I'm supposed to be.
It's like work smarter, not harder, but for your whole life, not just your career. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are some key things our listeners can take away and actually use? How can they find their own 80-20 magic?
It all starts with awareness. It's about tuning into what truly lights you up and makes you feel alive. What are those activities, those relationships, even those things you own that bring you the most joy? That's your 20%.
It's like decluttering your life, not just your house. Okay, so we figure out our 20%. What's next? How do we use that to make real changes?
Once you know what they are, you make different choices. It's about really putting your energy into those relationships, following those passions, excelling where you naturally shine.
It's about simplifying things and focusing on what really matters. Sounds so simple, but it's so powerful. But let's be real, changing habits is tough. Any tips for staying on track when things get tricky?
You got it. Remember, we're aiming for progress, not perfection. Take small steps and be kind to yourself. And don't be afraid to try things out, make adjustments, It's all part of the process.
Love that. Embrace the journey. This has been a fantastic deep dive, but honestly, we've just scratched the surface of this 80-20 principle. Any final nuggets of wisdom for our listeners before we wrap up?
Here's something to think about. If just a handful of things we do can lead to the majority of our results in every single area of life, imagine what's possible when you really hone in on your own unique 20%. That's where the magic happens.
Now, that's a powerful thought to end on. Thanks so much for joining me on this 80-20 journey. It's been awesome. And to everyone listening out there, I hope you're fired up to unlock your own 80-20 potential. Until next time, keep exploring.